The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Mr.
President, are there areas specifically of Ukraine that you're talking about in giving back, specifically Crimea? Have you gotten to those details yet on such an agreement?
Well, you mean the areas that were taken?
Yeah.
There are a lot of areas that were taken. Yeah, we've talked about it. A lot of the sea line has been taken. And we'll be talking about that, and we're going to see if we can get it back, or get a lot of it back for Ukraine, if that's possible. We'll be seeing about that, okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Zelensky is in Washington, D.C. today, visiting with President Trump. President Trump came out and greeted him as he exited the vehicle, unlike he did with Emmanuel Macron. And those clips there, that's a big turnaround from what President Trump was saying last week, 2 weeks ago. He's asked, do you still think Volodymyr Zelensky is a dictator? And Trump says, did I say that? I don't believe I said that. Zelensky's coming into town. They're talking about signing this mineral deal. And hearing those clips of President Trump there, it's funny. It's also a bit frightening to see a strong leader. I mean, he goes back and forth. He's going to say what he needs to say around the people that he's dealing with. And to Trump's, I mean, that is the way he operates. That is his art of the deal. I think one thing that's refreshing about that is last week, all you heard was the regime media back to saying, Donald Trump is Putin's puppet. Putin's narrative, Donald Trump it's absolute proof that Putin rigged the 2016 election to get President Trump installed. No evidence of that, but they're back to saying that. And now President Trump is saying things that Vladimir Putin, the puppet master, wouldn't approve of. Well, we want that land back now for Ukraine. I don't believe he's a dictator. And he did say that. I mean, like, on one hand, it is frightening to just see a man deal so whimsically in that sense. I mean, he can be this way one day and then the next day he's another way. That's man's world. But it's also slightly refreshing just to see him push back on these people. They get so upset if you don't say exactly what they want you to say when they want you to say it. And Trump, I mean, he's just spitballing a lot of times. And it sends them into an absolute frenzy. And that's hard to deal with. And that's probably his greatest strength when it comes to deal making, is that he can be pretty unpredictable. Now, again, that is not God's way of handling things. The art of the deal is not God's way. This is all man's way. And again, seeing this story, it's always made so complicated. I'm just reviewing some of this history. You go back to October 2016, and Democrats loved Russia. They were happy to sign deals with Russia. Hillary Clinton had the reset button. But November of that year, November 2016, suddenly there's this big flip-flop because Trump gets in. Now, again, these are complicated issues. These aren't, again, issues that a man can solve. I wanted to play this clip from Mr. Armstrong. It's a little longer, but he explains about how impossible it is for man to sort out these problems on his own. And the only answer, as we've covered on this show, is God. You have to turn back to God. It's the simple but difficult way to do things. This is Mr. Armstrong. I think this is probably from the 60s, maybe the early 70s. This is clip 9.
Now, we fought a war against Germany, World War II, and Japan. Of course, we said at the beginning of World War II that we would certainly do away with German militarism and it would never rise up its ugly head again. We were going to demolish it once and for all, and after we got it demolished, now we start to rise it up ourselves, because we think we have to have it as a buffer and a protection against Russia. And some of us, my friends, know not only what we see when we're over there, but we know also what is prophesied. And we know what is prophesied to rise up in Europe. And we know which is the one and the only nation in Europe that is capable of dominating, and which is the economic and the industrial heart of all Europe, without which there could be no stability and strength. A human body cannot live without its heart. And the economic and the military body that is to rise up and to restore the Roman Empire, the thing that we least suspect here in the United States, it cannot rise up without its heart. And its heart is in Germany. And I want to tell you that things are coming along over there exactly according to prophecy, and the very thing that our people least expect is just about to happen. And it's progressing daily. It's progressing feverishly. It's progressing rapidly. And we're sound asleep at the switch and don't realize what's coming and why, and we're not taking the right precautions. Well, now, let me say this. All of the military precautions we can take are not going to save us anymore. We, my friends, don't realize it, but we have deserted our God. And God is the one who determines the outcome of wars. God is the one who saw to it that we actually came out victor in World War I and in World War II.
A strong and a simple message. We don't see what's coming. We have to look to God. We can't rely on men. Only God has the answers to these problems. I forgot to welcome everybody to the show. Welcome back to the Trumpet Daily. I'm Sam Livingston, generally your producer for the show, subbing in today as Mr. Fleury's out on the camp out with some of the college students. If you have any comments for the show, you can send those to td@thetrumpet.com. I did want to spend a bigger portion of the show talking about this booklet, Germany's Conquest of the Balkans. And then I remembered that a little over 10 years ago, we produced a 25-minute long mini documentary that is just a synopsis of this book. So we'll play that for you a little later. It's a fantastic book. It's important history to remember. And it's not just World War II. This is 1989, 1990, 1998, and 99, talking about Yugoslavia, talking about Germany taking over the euro. An important history to remember, history that we're not far removed from at all. Well, as I was working on just gathering some of the news, I was waiting all day for the Epstein client list to drop because they hyped that up, and I'm waiting all day thinking, oh, it's going to be really easy to get a bunch of news, and then it doesn't come. They produce the binder they call it Epstein Documents Phase 1, and it's 200 pages of documents that have pretty much already been released through court filings. And Pam Bondi, this was the big reveal apparently, and then she comes out later and says, well, actually, I asked for all of the documents. They said that was what they could hand me, and then I find out that they're actually withholding a lot of things right now. There are rumors that there are a lot of agents, lower level agents, like feverishly deleting documents right now. I wanted to read this quote. We've read it before from Mr. Fleury. It's from the Trumpet magazine, January 2021. He talks about the election and the results of that and Donald Trump not disappearing from the scene. He writes, "This means this nation is about to be shocked. I believe you are going to see frauds exposed like you've never even imagined. In a sense, you could say the left is fighting against God and God's prophecy. Who do you suppose will win that battle? In fact, prophecy shows that many earth-shaking events are certain to happen in the next few years. We are going to see things unfold that will astound us perhaps every week. I don't know exactly how this will play out, but I believe God is allowing it to happen this way to ensure that the evil and corruption in America are exposed." And he wrote that right at the start of the Biden regime after they stole that election. And there was this pause in the Trump presidency, and a lot of things were exposed in that time. It revealed a lot about the radical left to this country. One of the things was Elon Musk buying Twitter and revealing the Twitter files. And now to think that this is the man that is being used to expose a lot of this, he's in charge of Doge, and he's, again, exposing a lot. We're waiting for these Epstein files. And Pam Bondi says to Kash Patel, they're not handing over these documents. And now they're looking into it. Pam Bondi said she wanted all of the files on her desk at 8 a.m. this morning. I haven't heard if that's happened or how long it will take before we find those things. They're investigating, again, Jim Comey. I think Comey's daughter even works at this FBI office where all of these documents are being held. It's some district in New York where Epstein was indicted. But you look at the corruption in the government, you wonder how many people, how many conservatives are even involved in this that don't want their names out there. We're going to see things exposed that will astound us perhaps every week. This was Marsha Blackburn. She wrote, this is in Fox News, she says, "For me, this is not about the celebrity, and I know that there are many people that want to see who all flew on his planes and guested at his Caribbean island. But let's break these human trafficking rings apart. Let's get these people apprehended. Let's get them prosecuted. Let's get them jailed. Let's put an end to this and save lives." That's agreed. But again, she doesn't want, it sounds like, to go after the big names. That's how it's been since this story emerged, was the wealthy, the elite, they get a free pass, and of course lock up the sex traffickers. Of course go after them. But you think about the sickness that has to be exposed. I mean, where are the arrests, as so many people are saying? The radical left, they're very efficient at arresting political opposition. When it comes to the right, when it comes to actually not weaponizing government, but holding people accountable that weaponize the government illegally, they're very slow, very hesitant to do that. Reluctant to go after these big names. How many people are exposed? How many people knew this was going on and said nothing? Epstein, I think it was like 2006, 2007, he was indicted in Florida for this very thing. And I think he served a little time in jail, but then he goes right back to celebrity status, doing the same thing. Pretty much let off the hook. We're learning each day just how gross the United States is. This nation that was supposed to be a shining light. There's this story about these NSA employees, National Security Agency, and they get to see everything. They get to read all of your texts, all of your emails. If that message touches a server outside the United States, the NSA knows about it. And there are these whistleblowers coming forward that are saying a lot of this agency, a lot of the higher ups, they're transgender, and they're part of this, they called it a transgender cult that target irregular Americans. This is from Christopher Rufo at City Journal. He says, according to our whistleblower, and they're talking about a lot of these chat rooms were exposed. I don't even want to get into the disgusting details of these things and what they were talking about, but Tulsi Gabbard has said that all of them are going to be fired. But you look at just what's been going on in our government and when it started. It says, according to, let me just move ahead. This longtime NSA insider tells me that the ideological capture of the NSA began a decade ago. Trans activists have entrenched themselves in positions of power, pressured employees to undergo re-education trainings, and compromised national security in the name of ideology. This is a sadly familiar story in many American institutions, but with the NSA, the stakes are higher. The agency is responsible for overseeing America's digital intelligence gathering and is in theory a key part of our national security apparatus. That whistleblower saying it's 10 years ago, 2014, 2015, Obama, all of the wokies getting into these positions of power. And look at the pushback when you try to expose these frauds. The CNN had a panel last night. Scott Jennings is just sitting there. I don't know how he can deal with listening to these guys go on and on, but all of them saying Doge and what Trump is doing, we're in a dictatorship now. One of them panicking, literally saying, we are living in a dictatorship. There was one government employee that allegedly an employee, it's like Mr. Loker said yesterday, some of these videos you see of these people, it's hard to believe they're real, but she said, and I think this one did check out, that because she received that email, it felt to her like this is what people go through in North Korea. It was that bad to receive an email that just said, can you list the 5 things that you accomplished the prior week? And to make it so much worse, they received that email on a Saturday night while I assume they're all out partying or whatever it is. They couldn't possibly be bothered to answer that email Monday morning. Some of these federal workers, I mean, more of them, they are coming out and they're saying it openly. They're saying it to CNN. We'll play a clip here in just a minute. I mean, listen to what they're saying and just how audacious they are to speak about their employer. I mean, if you would talk this way about your employer, yeah, you'd get fired. But the entitlement, like Mr. Fleury covered earlier this week, that's why they go and work for the government. Because it's not about serving the people. It's about serving themselves. It's an easy job. There's no accountability. I don't have to say what I did last week. It's about me. I deserve this. Notice some of these clips from these federal workers. This is clip 5.
The email that came out wanting us to justify our jobs with 5 things we did last week was on Saturday night. Yeah. And I was literally working on Saturday night to make up for all the distractions I had had the previous week, which came from the executive branch. And so I'm working, trying to catch up on things, and then I get that email on top of it. It's very hard to keep your train of thought when you're getting threatened and harassed like that.
Can you tell us what your message is to these senators while we're walking?
I think it's really cruel to fire people for poor performance when they've only had great feedback. We've never had an issue with our performance, and we're doing work for the American public. We're here for safety. And we're patriots. We love our country. That's why we're taking these jobs that don't pay us in the private sector. I'm an accountant. I could get a private sector job tomorrow.
I'm sure there are a lot of really nice and hardworking people that work for the federal government. I would assume the ones that are protesting are probably some of the worst ones. That first one, to get an email, please just list 5 things you did last week. She said that that was a threat and harassment. It threw her off her rocker. That young girl there, I don't want to go after their character so much. I mean, so this is the way society coddles people. I think it's really cruel to fire people for poor performance. And then she says, I could easily get a job in the private sector. A lot of people say, well, you probably aren't working there because you are held accountable for poor performance and would lose your job. That's why you're working at the federal government. I don't know what building they were in. It looked like it was a pretty big one, probably in D.C. These probably aren't, just local federal employees, in Omaha or something. What is the environment at these federal offices that these employees can feel like they can just run to CNN to talk like that? It's so self-serving, entitled, like they're there to just be taken care of. You look at just, again, the explosion, at just cleaning up some of this mess, the bloated government. I think Jesse Waters last night talked about it. If you mention Social Security, that's $1.3 trillion a year that the United States spends on Social Security. It's the biggest item on the budget. If you just mention cleaning that up, Democrats, oh, you want to cancel Social Security? You're canceling all these benefits. No, there's 400 million people registered for it, and we have a population of 340 million. So 50 to 60 million people on there that shouldn't be. Let's just clean it up. It's the same thing with Medicaid, Medicare. If you combine those, that's actually the biggest budget item, $1.4 trillion. Mike Johnson said, we just want to get the people off of there that shouldn't be on there. We created it to take care of people in need. We created it to take care of people with disabilities, the elderly, to take care of low-income families. And you've got 29-year-old men on there, and they should be out working. We talk about the labor shortages. Well, a lot of them don't have to work, so we want to clean them off and save some more money and make them productive and contributing. Waters talked about just how much money. Medicaid, it's so easy to commit fraud with a lot of these handouts. In California, he mentioned how Medicaid, they find ways to funnel Medicaid money into paying for all sorts of random things at some of these institutions, to pay for art and music lessons at one organization. I think in Oregon, he said that they found a way to use Medicare to help pay for cooking classes for I don't even remember the age group. So DOJ says, we want to clean it up. And these people blow up because it undermines their whole system. It undermines the way they've functioned for decades. It's just one giant slush fund. This is how they get paid. And if you try to clean it up, you'll see all that fraud. You'll see it exposed. You'll see things exposed that will astound you. Speaking of cleaning things up, the Washington Post reports that Trump's planning to close more than 110 IRS offices around the nation, just trimming back things that aren't needed. And that's, again, is Elon Musk's philosophy. I think he overcuts, and then you see, okay, well, we actually needed that, so we'll go ahead and we'll bring that one back in. And all of these the members of the regime media, well, he's got access to private records. And Musk, as some conservatives have pointed out, well, he's appointed by the president to do what he's doing. And they mentioned this story about how President Trump's tax documents got leaked. I think that was in 2019 and 2020. The New York Times, Rachel Maddow, she was happily waving his tax documents around, and everyone said, well, how did you get those? Well, you have illegally obtained those. Those should not be released by the IRS. And then you look into, okay, well, how did those documents get out of the IRS? Well, the IRS works with a lot of third-party contractors, and it turns out that one of them has access to a lot of information, and he was stealing all of that data, never really vetted who that guy was. Thousands of these low-level contractors, no one has a clue who they are, have access to your private data, and he stole, I think it ended up being, I don't know where the details are in my notes here. It was details that compromised 400,000 U.S. taxpayers. He handed it over to ProPublica. They made this huge, beautiful article about the taxes of America's billionaires and millionaires and how much they pay. He had access to all of that data, and he was prosecuted. I think he got a 5-year prison sentence. But you look at the way the government has been running all of these years, and to have someone come in and say, we just want to clean it up, I mean, that makes them apoplectic. Their response is this is the end of the world. And for them, in a lot of cases, it really is. All right, well, that took me a little closer to the time I wanted to get to. So I mentioned, I'm amazed at how fast that goes. I mentioned that we would play a film that we produced a few years ago. It was over 10 years ago. It's about Germany's conquest of the Balkans. I think we titled this film Germany's Conquest of Europe. And again, it covers a lot of really important history that we need to inform how we watch the news right now. So we'll go ahead and I will end my portion of today's show, and we'll take a break. There's a WorldWatch, and then after the WorldWatch, we'll go right into this film, Germany's Conquest of Europe. Thank you for joining us on today's show. Again, send any feedback to td@thetrumpet.com. We'll be right back.
Daily news, Bible prophecy. See the connection on the Trumpet Daily. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the flood of news and information? You need something to sift the news and bring you only what matters most. You need the Trumpet Daily. You also need something to help you understand not just what's happening now, but what will happen next. You need the Trumpet Daily. Only the Trumpet Daily accurately matches daily news to precise Bible prophecies. Because Bible prophecy is the only tool up to the task of sifting the news down to what's important and showing you what will happen next. Join host Stephen Flurry every weekday. Go to trumpetdaily.com.
Germany's Christian Democratic Union leader Friedrich Merz phoned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Sunday night, February 23rd. This was after the CDU won that day's German federal election. Merz is the frontrunner to become Germany's next chancellor. According to a press release from the Israeli government, Netanyahu and Merz had a warm conversation. Netanyahu congratulated Merz on his victory, while Merz told Netanyahu he would invite him to make an official visit to Germany. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, accusing him and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant of war crimes in the Israeli-Gaza war. The rapidity of Merz's offer suggests that he values a partnership with Netanyahu and is unafraid to snub the ICC to support Israel. Early on in Israel's war against Hamas, while much of the world labeled Israel as an aggressor, Germany publicly stood by Israel. It remained a reliable partner throughout the war. Israel may look to Germany and Europe to fortify its security, but this misguided trust will lead to the greatest security breach in its history. To learn more about what the Bible predicts regarding this alliance, read Should Israel Trust Germany? Through diplomatic channels, Japan is protesting China's illegal incursions into its territorial waters, Kyodo News reported on February 19th. 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships were reported to have entered Japanese waters near the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Though administered by Japan, China claims the Senkaku Islands as its own, just as China claims territories belonging to 16 of its other neighbors. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi said the latest intrusion is a violation of the international law and promised to take determined action to defend Japan against Chinese aggression. China is growing increasingly belligerent toward its neighbors' sovereign territories, maritime and terrestrial alike. To learn more about the end results of its aggressive behavior, read China is steering the world toward war. 3 empty buses exploded in a Tel Aviv suburb in the evening of February 20th after detonators went off at the wrong time in a suspected Iran-linked terrorist attack. Israeli police neutralized 2 other bombs in the area. Although no injuries were reported, Israeli officials said hundreds could have died had the bombs gone off when intended. Israel's security officials believe Iran may have planned the attack and that Hamas terrorists from the West Bank carried it out. Iran supplies and trains Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist cells in the West Bank. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, and Israel routinely suffers from attacks carried out by it and its terrorist proxies, such as Hamas. To understand the motive of these attacks and why they take place so often, read Ugly Truths About Islamic Terrorism. To learn more about current world news and how it relates to Bible prophecy, please visit thetrumpet.com.
Among all the stunning events unfolding in the world today, one stands out as the most significant. Germany has taken control of the European Union.
The Philadelphia Church of God presents the Trumpet Daily.
The EU is in crisis. Financial calamity is toppling the governments of its member nations. Crippling debt is forcing countries to beg EU leaders for help. Germany has the strongest national economy in the Union, and it has positioned itself to provide that help, but at a steep cost. Step by step, Berlin is gaining control over other European nations and taking command of the entire unification project. Watchful observers are eyeing these events with suspicion, and some are speaking out. Seeing the Germans gain so much power has many people nervous, and for good reason. Amid this financial crisis, Germany is achieving exactly what it wanted but failed at in 2 world wars: control of Europe. To see the magnitude of this development, one needs to understand history. That certainly includes the shattering events of World Wars I and II. But there is far more recent history that is also deeply revealing of the true danger in what is happening in Europe today. The setting of this history is Southern Europe's hotly contested and strategic underbelly, the Balkans. In the early 1900s, Germany was looking to expand its empire. Berlin wanted to control the Balkan Peninsula and needed a pretext to launch an offensive there. It goaded Austria and Hungary into putting such steep demands on Serbia that the Serbs couldn't possibly meet them. In 1914, the trigger for World War I occurred in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, when Austria's Archduke Franz Ferdinand was shot dead by a Serb nationalist. Germany used the assassination as cause to start a war. Soon all of Europe was engulfed in the worst warfare in human history. Serbian forces resisted the German and Austro-Hungarian attack, and the Balkans became soaked with blood. The city of Belgrade fell to German-led forces in 1915, and Germany ruled the area for 3 years. It wasn't until right at the end of the war that the demolished capital city was finally liberated by Serbian and French troops. Germany's plan to control the Balkans ended in failure. When Germany sought to dominate Europe in the Second World War, Yugoslavia was again high on its list of targets. In April of 1941, German, Italian, and Hungarian forces attacked. The rebuilt Serbian capital was again decimated by the German Air Force. The German army invaded Belgrade and took hundreds of thousands of Yugoslavian soldiers captive. The occupying Axis powers proceeded to eliminate the Yugoslav threat by splintering the country. Germany absorbed Slovenia into the Third Reich and occupied parts of Serbia, as well as Bosnia and Herzegovina. Berlin then established the independent state of Croatia as a Nazi puppet regime. It appointed a fascist anti-Yugoslav separatist movement, called the Ustasha, to rule and to carry out its Holocaust operations there. The Ustasha killed hundreds of thousands of Serbs and Jews in concentration camps, sometimes using very gruesome methods.
No one can overestimate the fear that Eastern Europeans, people in the Balkans, have of the Germans. The memory of the occupations is still seared in their minds. The German occupation was unspeakably brutal, particularly in Yugoslavia, and particularly with the Serbians, because during World War II the Croatians were allied with the Germans, whereas the Serbs fought them.
Croatian leader Ante Pavelić forcibly converted tens of thousands of Serbian Orthodox to Roman Catholicism on threat of execution. For this he received the blessing of senior Vatican leaders and the praise of Pope Pius XII. The Pope personally received Pavelić in a private audience in 1941, even after evidence of the Croat leader's atrocities had already become well known. As Mark Ahrens and John Loftus wrote in their 1991 book Unholy Trinity, Pavelić also knew that the Holy See looked on Croatia as the frontier of Christianity. A special relationship between Croatia and the Pope extended back to 700 AD. At the war's end, the Vatican went on to protect the fugitive Croatian leader. Along with thousands of war criminals and Nazis, Catholic leaders smuggled Pavelić to Argentina through its infamous rat lines. Yugoslav resistance to the Axis powers in World War II was largely led by Serbian and pro-Serbian forces. The Allies recognized these fighters and supplied assistance to drive the German-led Axis out of Serbia in 1944. Thus, during the most destructive wars in history, America and the Serbs were united against their common enemy, Germany. After that enemy was vanquished, Yugoslavia unified once again under the rule of Marshal Josip Broz Tito. Even as the country looked forward to a brighter future, it grieved over the deaths of about 1 million of its people in World War II. This history provides important context for more recent events. Though Germany lost both world wars, its leaders never forgot their dreams of empire. And in later years, when they felt the time had come to revive that long-held ambition, they looked again to dominate the region they had twice conquered by force of arms. Once more, they set their sights on the Balkans. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, it reunited East and West Germany into a single nation. Western leaders praised the unification in public. In private, however, many of them were deeply concerned. Recently released official transcripts of Kremlin meetings show that the leaders of France, Britain, and Russia were privately discussing the danger of a unified Germany. It wasn't long before these fears began to be confirmed. In 1991, Croatia and Slovenia moved to become independent of Yugoslavia. Virtually the whole world opposed the move, including the United Nations, NATO, even the European Economic Community. Yugoslavia was in turmoil. The region had a long history of dangerous volatility. It was clear that such a huge geopolitical shift would totally destabilize the Balkans. That is why the world saw the situation as a danger, and that is exactly why Germany saw it as an opportunity. In December 1991, Germany boldly defied global opinion and extended diplomatic recognition to the two breakaway states. The Vatican, that age-old ally of Roman Catholic Croatia, did the same. America and the rest of Europe protested this aggressive move, so Germany threatened to pull out of the European Union. This put these nations in a difficult position. European leaders decided the issue wasn't worth fighting over. The rest of the European Economic Community caved and followed Germany's position. The UN Security Council followed along. The New York Times reported, "The Security Council backed away from a confrontation with Germany over Yugoslavia today after Germany's European allies on the Council decided that they did not want a major clash with Bonn." These were areas the Nazis had dominated during the last World War. That same Times article said that by extending diplomatic recognition of Croatia and Slovenia, Germany has stirred troubling historical associations. Observers were taken aback by Germany's unusual assertiveness and saw its victory as a major sign of its new power within Europe. Despite these concerns, however, even America reversed its position and followed Germany's lead. This startling foreign policy shift enraged Britain and other American allies. These nations had hoped that the European unification project would keep Germany under control with help from America. Instead, America helped Germany enforce its will on the rest of Europe. This failure to stand up to Germany early on set the scene for the transformation of the entire Yugoslav region and the rest of Europe as well. After Croatia gained its independence in 1991, it acknowledged its indebtedness to its European benefactor by adopting the hymn Danke Deutschland, Thank You, Germany.
Danke Deutschland, vielen Dank. Wir sind jetzt nicht.
The Germans began to support the breakaway republics of Croatia and Slovenia with troops and armaments, and soon after, just as many observers had predicted, civil war broke out in Yugoslavia. The conflict spread from Croatia and Slovenia into Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia. Many observers said that Germany was at fault. U.S. Secretary of State Warren Christopher said that Germany had a certain responsibility for the war. Remarkably, though, international criticism centered on Europe not for initiating the war, but for failing to step in and clean up the mess. Calls grew for the European Union and Germany to become more involved in the region. The U.S. began to pursue a policy to encourage Germany's political dominance of Europe. It supported Germany's presence in Croatia as part of this plan. As Joseph de Courcy wrote in August of 1995, the recent events in the former Yugoslavia, important and dangerous as they are, form only a small part of an overall U.S.-German plan for Europe. America's solution is to encourage and support German hegemony in both East and West Europe, so Germany, with the full backing of America, is to be the sole great power of Europe. Having gained a foothold in Croatia, Germany worked through the rest of the 1990s to leverage its position against the Serbs. Germany broadened its ties with Albania to the south of Yugoslavia. It also targeted the Kosovo region in the southern part of Serbia. Germany laid the groundwork for rending Kosovo from Serbia by supporting an internationally unrecognized government in exile whose prime minister was based in Germany. It supplied financial support to a radical Albanian guerrilla army called the Kosovo Liberation Army in waging a terrorist campaign against the Serbs. The Serbs could see who was behind these events. On a Serbian radio broadcast in 1998, commentator Malika Sundik accused Germany of warmongering and warned the rest of Europe against a rebirth of German fascism. It is difficult to comprehend and accept that Europe has become Germany's slave, he said. When Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic retaliated against the violence perpetrated by the Kosovo Liberation Army, Germany swooped in. They were ready and eager to neutralize their long-term enemy. The German defense minister accused the Serbs of genocide and of setting up concentration camps. The Germans convinced NATO to act swiftly to subdue the Serbian forces. Stratfor reported, Germany is leading the campaign for a quick and, if necessary, military solution to the conflict in Kosovo. Once again, the Germans got their way. In the Kosovo War of 1999, NATO forces went to work in furthering Germany's national interests. The war dealt a fatal blow to Serbia. The New York Times noted that the conflict was the first time since World War II that German fighter jets had gone to war. The Times said it marked Germany's definitive emancipation from post-war pacifism. It then made this chilling observation. The German participation in air raids on Yugoslavia is potentially explosive, for it will confirm every dark Serbian suspicion about the West. If there has been a single obsession in Serbian policy this century, it has been to prevent what Belgrade sees as German expansionism in the Balkans. This dramatic sequence of events exposed Germany's plan to shatter Yugoslavia and transform it into a collection of European colonies. During World War II, Serbia had been allied with the United States against Germany. In the Kosovo War, Germany was able to recruit America's help to bring Serbia down. The plan succeeded wildly. In one swoop, Germany bent the U.S. and Europe to its will. It used NATO forces to achieve its own national aims and neutralized a former enemy. On top of that, the theater of war in the Balkans gave Germany an area in which to test and build its own military. Further, by attaining victory there, Germany actually began to construct an eastern leg for a future German-dominated superstate. After systematically dismantling Yugoslavia, Germany cemented its control over this region. Following the Kosovo War, NATO, particularly the United States, wanted to get out of the Balkans and transfer responsibility for military operations to the Europeans. NATO began its withdrawal in 2002. The EU began its own first-ever policing missions in Bosnia in 2003. The area quickly became a proving ground for EU military ambitions, as Stratfor called it at the time. This is what Stratfor wrote on April 29, 2002. With the United States committed to disengaging from the Balkans, Germany will emerge as the dominant power in there, and by extension, in European defense policy. How true that statement turned out to be. Today, Slovenia is a member of the European Union. It joined the Eurozone in 2007 and even held the presidency of the EU Council for the first 6 months in 2008. Croatia became a member of the European Union in 2013. All the other countries that emerged from former Yugoslavia, as well as neighboring Albania, are trying to become EU members. Macedonia and Montenegro have been officially accepted as EU candidates. 4 others, including Serbia, as well as its former province, Kosovo, are potential candidates. It all amounts to a stunning coup for Germany. Now, with Germany's power over Europe all the more obvious, the true nature of this breathtaking history has become impossible to ignore. Few people recognize the significance of these events as they were happening. The Trumpet's editor-in-chief, Gerald Fleury, was among those few. He wrote several articles and recorded several television programs exposing Germany's plan.
Look at what's happening in Yugoslavia. I'll tell you, in every bit of that, you can find Germany's fingerprints and Germany's footprints in what's going on in Yugoslavia. The Serbs are enraged by it, and I think they have some justification for that. But is Germany behind the scenes really directing NATO very aggressively? I can show you in this report here that they've been the most aggressive nation in wanting to set a date to attack the Serbs and get on with the war.
In August 1999, Mr. Fleury published an important article for the Trumpet titled "Germany is Conquering the Balkans." He wrote, "Once again, the Germans are structuring an empire. They've been aggressive, out in the open, from the time of their deliberate tactic of destabilizing the Balkans to their brilliant takeover of the endgame. They will never leave the Balkan Peninsula now. Germany now has its Balkan corridor to the Adriatic, the Mediterranean, and Eastern Europe, for all intents and purposes, signed, sealed, and delivered. A masterful stroke of German diplomatic thoroughness." On the cover of the June 2002 Trumpet issue, Mr. Fleury described Yugoslavia as being nothing less than the first victim of World War III. The German-dominated EU now has control of the first colonies of its new empire. These statements didn't spring simply from insightful news analysis. They were informed by a source even more reliable than history in projecting their outcome. It's true that to see the importance of this series of events in Europe, one needs to understand history. But to truly grasp how dangerous it is, one also needs something else. There is a key that unlocks the meaning of monumental events and shows where these events are leading. It was that key that has led the Trumpet magazine to beat the drum for its entire 24-year history, warning of a German takeover of Europe. And it was that key that led the Plain Truth magazine to do the same for over 50 years before that. That key is biblical prophecy. The prophecies in Scripture vividly foretold what we are seeing unfold before our eyes. But they did more than predict current events. They also reveal their catastrophic outcome. These prophecies give strong warnings that have become far more urgent in light of recent events. Prophecy foretold a resurrection in our day of the medieval Holy Roman Empire, the most destructive empire in human history. That is what makes Germany's repeated attempts to structure an empire so dangerous, and its recent success so alarming. Revelation 13 and 17 speak of 10 European kings that will combine in our day into a single superpower. It is described symbolically as a beast with 10 horns. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength to the beast. Other prophecies show that the dominant nation among the 10 kings will be Germany, and that this terrifying empire will be guided and held together by the spiritual influence of the Roman Catholic Church. Scripture does not explicitly state which nations in Europe will come together, but a prophecy in the book of Daniel shows that this empire will have 2 legs, east and west. This has been the case historically with the Roman Empire. Looking at the prophecies, Herbert W. Armstrong spoke frequently about the inevitability of Europe's unification for over 60 years. Even as Germany lay smoldering in ruins after World War II, he prophesied that it would rise again. When the nation was split in two in 1949 as East Germany became occupied by the Soviets, he said it would be reunited. He proclaimed well in advance that European nations would form an economic bloc which would pave the road for political and eventual military union. In 1980, anticipating the building of the eastern leg of that empire, 9 years before the Berlin Wall fell, Mr. Armstrong declared, "It now looks entirely feasible that Yugoslavia may be included in this revived Roman Empire. Also, the Pope's native Poland and Romania, and possibly Hungary. Add Austria, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and France. There will be a union of 10 nations in the general area of the medieval Roman Empire in the new united Europe." All of these prophecies are coming to pass, or are already history. Conditions in Europe today provide dramatic proof of the accuracy of the Bible's prophecies. Yugoslavia's fall to become a set of European colonies exposes the true nature of this rising German-dominated empire. And these events should help all of us to recognize the deadly seriousness of the scriptural warnings about what is going to happen next. The prophet Jeremiah wrote about a boiling cauldron, and the face thereof is from the north. This churning, scalding pot from the north symbolizes Europe, and it has reached the point where anyone can recognize it. The trouble is, far too many are caught up in petty personal interests to notice. Referring to this prophecy in a March 2003 article, German-led EU Conquers Yugoslavia, Gerald Fleury wrote, "People could see and even feel the seething if they only understood a little history. But they refuse to be taught by history, even quite recent history. There are only a few short years before the pot boils over." How well do you understand the urgency of the times? The perspective on present events afforded by biblical prophecy is crucial. It was because of that perspective that Mr. Fleury was able to write more than a decade ago, "Brace yourselves. A strong militaristic Germany is marching once again, and its destruction this time will make its crimes in World Wars I and II look like child's play. World War III has already begun. Soon all of Europe will be under Germany's control, and that is only the beginning." Today, all of Europe is under Germany's control. This is just as Herbert Armstrong predicted, just as Gerald Flurry prophesied, just as the Bible said.